Kevin, you okay?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, all members are present except for Brad. Minutes of 9:15. Does everyone have the minutes?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Is there a second? Any discussion? No discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And all right, treasurer's report.
Okay.
You also have that.
Does everybody have my report? Okay. This is kind of an easy one. We've got 25% of the year gone and things look wonderful. General government expenditures that are at 28%, but that's normal because of early requirements and it's lower than last year. Bonded indebtedness payments also look high, but that's again because we schedule bond payments in July and August. Revenues are coming in great guns. Tax collections are actually running ahead of last year, and remember last year we finished with a revenue surplus of $300,000. As usual, the revenue from the state of Connecticut is low relative to the budget.
It's in
Early in the year, but that's just the
Teddy's here.
way it is every year. And our local revenues are still coming in strong. The 38% of our expected local revenues we've already received.
All right. And no outstanding line items that concern you?
None that concern me, no. You've obviously got some things like the Kate running a little ahead of expenditures, but we talked about that. Environmental health is a little ahead of schedule, but that's because we pay for the nurses up front.
Marine Patrol looks good.
So, no, there's nothing that concerns me.
Mark, you make a point, that's just because it's seasonal, right, the point?
Yeah, and it's because you're paying for the kids who run the miniature golf. But I guarantee it's worth the cost.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, the only other thing I have to report is that the auditors arrive on Tuesday. They'll be here for about 3 weeks.
Any questions for Bob?
I have a question. Bob, when do you give advice or you give words of encouragement or to the different heads of the different departments when you see that their budget is over budget early in the season, etc.? Do you or Lisa do that?
Our division of responsibilities lets the management of these things to the selectman's office and Lisa.
Okay. And Lisa and you see these about the same time together?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Tom, that is something that I look at every month, and it's something that I was very cognizant of last year, and called in several department heads as a result of it, and reported back to this board on multiple departments to tell you about where the problem was or where the problem wasn't. Because we did underexpend. The surplus wasn't solely as a result of revenues. Surplus was partly as a result of under expenditure on budgeted items too. So
I know Larry was under budget, and then HVAC at the Kate was over You know, so I mean, you
And
get-
that's a problem every year, and that's, you know.
What about, how do you rein people in saying stop spending, stop?
You know, I had one department, well, not, probably not the one you're thinking of, but another department, that, who has a part-time assistant, and I looked at the hours that that assistant had been working for the last 2 months, and they were higher than I thought they were budgeted for, and I told that person, you know, there's a problem here, and you need to look at how you're going to manage it the rest of the year. And that was the fire marshal. And it did get managed down a little bit. He was able to look at some of the testing and maybe put it into this year without hurting this year's budget. And so, you know, I look at it. And now, there are other things that I can't control, in the sense that if the heating and air conditioning over at the Cape is continually a problem. Sometimes it's too cold in the winter, and sometimes it's too hot in the summer. I don't know if that's the original construction and design. Likely it is. I mean, the building's not that old. It's 8 years old, if that. Maybe it was 2009 even. You know, I'll report on this building in a second. The heat in this building, we have no heat right now. The boiler crapped out. I think, did I tell you guys that last time? But I'm gonna report on that and tell you what I've decided to do. I'll get back, so when it's
I
my
can
time.
add one thing about the Cape.
Yeah,
When we were building it, we did go back to the public for an extra $300,000 in referendum. A lot of that was to improve the
and that got
HVAC system. And it didn't, it failed.
denied, yeah. You know, that building, I anticipate will be close this year, but at some point, we may want to take a look at a capital expenditure to see what really needs to be done. But, you know, there's certain items that, if the town had a larger contingency, we have a very small contingency, it's $20,000. I don't know if any of you mentioned it, this is in my report, or if any of you noticed it. When you walked into town hall, it's painted, the front. There are 3 sections as you look at town hall. There's one, the door section, there's a middle section, then there's the above section where we had a roof leak. That's being covered by insurance, as you know. But it was $3,200 to get that painted. I mean, I had multiple complaints from people over the last 2 or 3 years. And even Brad, when we were walking out one day, said, just do it. I mean, because it looks so bad. And I did, and it was $3,200. I took it out of town hall maintenance, but there's no fund. There's not, you know, I was sitting in Lisa's office the other day, and I said, you know, we spent $3,200 on painting. That's not in the budget, okay? There should probably, this building is 2004. So this building is 11, coming up 12 years old. I don't think anything's been done. Like, we are not rotating rooms to paint. I said this to her just the other day. I said, I don't know that we're taking care of the interior of this building the way we should be to make it look fresh. We don't have the money to do that in this budget. So I am going to maybe propose to you next year that we put 10 or 15,000 just for painting, just to keep the building looking.
What's the square footage of this building?
I don't know offhand. You know, I don't know.
Because the rule of thumb is 2%.
So,
Well, it concerns me when you just said, we don't have the money in the budget to do this, so it doesn't get done. But yet, departments see their budget and they say, well, screw that.
no, they don't. Typically, they don't. Typically, they don't. I disagree with you, so. Anyway, we were on Bob's report.
I think we finished.
Any other questions for Bob?
I have another question. Bob, or Carl, is there a standard percentage that you allow a department to start to overrun before you get concerned about the overage? You let them run 1% over, 2% over, 5% over, 10%
Well,
over?
that's not really Bob's, that's not a question for Bob. That's a question for me or Lisa.
Okay,
So I guess I would say to you, Tom, at what percentage do you get concerned? Because you saw the monthly reports too. in
yeah,
fact,
yeah,
Okay, and so you were just as aware as we were, and concern was expressed to all the departments that were over. I certainly was concerned. Let's talk about it, the police budget. I was hoping it would be a lot lower than it was. In fact, I was understood it was going to be less than it was, but it ended up, I don't know that we have a final number yet, but until the auditors take a final look at those numbers and Lisa. But, I get concerned when any of these budgets go over, okay? Because they shouldn't be. Now, that being said, 4 years ago, the Cape budget was $22,000. And you guys remember, and I'm not going to call out any particular resident in particular, but Hank Conti every year was saying, that right? He was on the Cape, and he was right. It was underfunded every year. And we've tried to get to a point where that building, to pay for lights, heating, gas, whatever, is properly funded, and I think we're really about where it should be. And I've tried to do that over the course of several years, so that we don't impact the taxpayer too much. We had a lot of other things going on. Zoning, you don't know what's going to happen in zoning. We just caught a lawsuit out in Otter Cove from somebody who is probably going to litigate this quite a ways if it doesn't go this person's particular way. There are some things you can't control. I mean, I can put aside a budget for Mike Cronin of whatever it is, $25,000, $30,000. I mean, we had land acquisition, we had, the preserve. If you get a bunch of big things. Last year in labor and personnel, Tom, we probably spent 30 grand on a $75,000 budget. I'll bet we'll spend a lot closer to 75 this year. We have a couple contracts, and I can report on that. I can do it now. We were unable to settle the dispatcher's contract, and we may be, unless we're able to make some headway, headed towards arbitration. That same union represents the police contract, which is up for July 1. And we're going to start negotiations, and I sincerely hope to settle that contract before July 1, starting negotiations in January. It's difficult, though, and you don't know how they're going to go. They can go well, and I hope they do. But, there's give and take in those things, and I've been, not just that union either. AFSCME represents two unions, and this other union called UPCU represents two other unions. And union negotiations are expensive, and last year we didn't have much. Now, do I reduce that line item? I don't, I kind of kept it steady the last few years. It's a ballpark amount. I don't know if it's going to be enough this year. If it's not, I will report to you. I will tell you it's not going to be enough. I expect I'm going to go over by 10 or 20, assuming, by the way, it's me. There is an election coming up. I should assume these things. But, let's just talk that the first selectman is going to report to this board. We do our best, when Bob gives you the monthly reports, we do our best to tell you who's where, and there are some things that are maintenance related that are a lot harder to control. There are some wild cards with regard to legal expenses, which are very difficult to control. But then you're right. There are other items that might be more personnel related, which you might be able to control a little bit more. However, we're in a union and it's hard to, we do have a union town. So it's not just like we can say to somebody, hey, you're not gonna work 40 hours this week, you're gonna work 20. It doesn't work that way. But we've tried to keep an eye on it. And so, that being said, since you're talking about overages, we did, as you know, put out an RFP for a new accounting system. With that new accounting system will come a more, well, not, I shouldn't say more robust, but a purchase order system. Let's just say what it is. And with a purchase order system, the money's encumbered. You're not going over budget. Unless this board releases more money. So that is something that's on the horizon that you, this board, is aware of, that my board and Lisa and Bob are seeking to implement. And we'll have a report to you more on that at another time.
Yeah, we have, in a few weeks, we have two
There were two vendors that
vendors
bid,
coming
and
in.
they're gonna come in and do.
They're each gonna show us their product. And then we'll have more,
So-
we'll tell you more.
So, Old Saybrook's town government has been run a certain way for 50 years. Bob's been in government 50 years, he can attest to this. Budgets go over, budgets go under, it's the way it's been run. By the way, other towns do the same thing, and they balance it out. At the end of the year, some have to go into their rainy day fund to do that. We've been quite fortunate, we haven't had to do that. That is the way this government has been run. We're not alone like that. We are not the only government that runs like that. That a department might go over by $1,000, a department might go over by $25,000, $100,000. It happens, and I'm not saying it's a good thing, but it can happen. My office is looking to, over the course of the next probably year, implementation of a new accounting system could be as early as July 1 of 16, but depending on whether it's a calendar year, fiscal year thing, it could be January 1, 17. Going to a purchase order system where you're likely to get a little bit less of that because you can't do it. You can't get a service if there's no money to be had. So I had another finance director from another town tell me, do not do it. Do not go to a purchase order system. And a well-respected finance director. He goes, as long as you're being responsible with your finances, and your board of finance has good oversight, whatever. Now, the Board of Ed runs by a purchase order system, okay? Many towns do run by a purchase order system. It will be a culture change in this town if that happens, an absolute 100% culture change.
It
It's the way.
centralizes management.
It what?
It centralizes management. That's why Board of Ed is successful. It's all in the home office, so to speak.
So it's.
Businesses run that way.
Yeah.
Probably jumping way ahead.
Yeah.
But does that system, so let's just say you have a budget of, I don't even know what to make up, $52,000. So $1,000 a week. Does it track by day that, you're getting, you spent your $1,000 in the first 3 days of that week, so you can't spend any more money for the next? Or does it just
Bob
wait till
may
the
know,
end?
or Lisa may know, I don't have experience with the purchase order system.
Now, the purchase order system, up front, you get people to say, I just put together a budget. These are the items that I'm gonna spend, and they put in purchase order,
Right.
okay? Only those purchase orders that get approved can they then spend money on. As the year goes by, they may put in more purchase orders. But that way, your control has nothing to do with how much is spent by how much time. You actually have control of the actual expenditure.
Well, what happens is you're getting the opportunity to approve it before it's spent. versus,
Exactly.
I got a
Yeah,
bill here
right.
for tires for 900.
No, that's right.
There's no money.
Right, you approve it before
Does
it's
that
spent.
include labor?
I was just gonna say, it doesn't necessarily work with personnel.
The budget is encumbered.
Yeah, exactly.
Will it affect the legal system too? Because that's the legal issues. Because that's one of the things that bothers me, is I was at the last police commission meeting. They already used their budget up on the legal side. And I find that hard to believe that the chairman of the police commission can meet with the town attorney and hire a lawyer. And
So yes,
we've already spent the budget.
it applies, well, sometimes you spend a budget in the first month of the year.
But just
We
the
have-
fact that it didn't go back to the board, the chairman just decided to go and do it, and you overspent the budget and the legal line item, it drives me nuts.
It does drive the control to a central management.
Right, but if you have, just to use personnel as an example, if you're halfway through the year and you've already used whatever, 80% of the personnel, you can't say, okay, you spent it, no one else can work for the rest of the year.
Right.
I mean, there has to be controls, like, you know, you should know monthly, this is what my budget is for our salaries. I mean, that's kind of, okay, this is what it is, this is what we need to fill, and bang.
Right.
You know, we should be getting,
One of the vendors come in?
I think it's 2
I
weeks or
have-
something.
Since I don't have control over that
Okay.
system, I haven't been included in those
But Lisa
emails.
set it up for, I think, 2 weeks.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, while we're talking about overages, actually from our last meeting, I went back to the year 2010 and looked at all of the overages by department through 2015.
Yeah.
And it seems to me if we focused on a few departments, we could probably get our hands around the issue by central control by the Office of the First Selectman.
Yeah.
And just for some data, just to give you something to think about, I use the number of 3 overages out of 6 as to be the minimum amount of overages I would record. And I'll give you the number of overages in the 6 years and the average amount that department was over in the 6-year cycle. And it's pretty interesting. The PD was over 4 times with an average of 69.6. The Kate was
yeah.
over 6 times, average of 23.1. Fire marshal was over 6 times, an average of 8.9.
Oh, 8,900? 8.9?
8,900.
Yeah.
Engineering was over 6 times, average of 18.5.
Yeah.
Legal was over 5 times. an average of-
Legal, John, is that what you said?
Was over 5 times, average
Yeah.
of 34.9. Zoning commission was over 4 times, an average of 16.5. Building department was over 4 times, an average of 10 grand. Zoning board of appeals was over 3 times, an average of 5 grand. And pension board was over 5 times, an average of 12.9.
Right.
And youth and family services was over 4 times, an average of 4,000. So if you look, I think every one of these departments that are over has a different reason for being over. And the idea of using a purchase order system to cover overages in general, I don't think is the way we should be looking at it. I mean, I'm not saying not to use purchase
Right.
orders, but I think we have to delve into each department that is trending over all the time and find out why. And then see what we can do to look into it to solve that issue. They should not be, maybe we're underfunding it, I don't know, but we should look at it individually. I mean, that's only my
It's
recommendation.
a great suggestion. Yeah.
Any other questions for Bob?
I thought Carl had still.
No, it's a good discussion, but, and I'm gonna come back to it,
All right,
it's not anything new in the last 6 years either,
right.
No.
okay? So, I look back, it's funny, in the town reports, I went back to 2000, after last year's discussion. I said, I gotta look to just check it out. And, you know, on average, there were at least 15 departments over every year. Now, various amounts. Sometimes years it was explosive, sometimes less so. It is the way that we have run our government. And you know, I mean, you could probably say, well, geez, that means you got fat in another budget, or you know, and you're covering on that side, and you could say that, or you're counting on revenues. You can't always count on revenues. You have a 2007, 2008, 2009, you lose a lot of your real estate revenues in the town clerk's office. Those revenues aren't going to be in. You get mini golf shut down. You know, so you know, it is a good idea to take a look. Now, I mean, some of those zoning, you know, truly uncontrollable to some extent. There are a board of like you. It would be like you guys overexpending your budget. Because there was an investigation that you guys asked for, and it was $10,000, and it came from the Board of Finance, you know?
But that's a singular moment. What I'm looking at is a trend.
Trends, yeah.
And I think that's how we have to look at it.
Well,
If
then-
you're trending that way, there's gotta be an underlying cause as why they're over all the time.
Well,
You
three
know,
of
singular
yeah.
moments, I mean, everybody has them.
Well, at least three of those are related to legal.
Yeah, and
ZBA, zoning,
I
and
think-
legal.
I think you
Yeah,
have to
right.
look at legal. I
Yeah.
mean, does every department need a lawyer at their board meeting? I mean, how much does that cost? I don't know. I mean, but we have to start asking questions as a board as well as your board. And I think the situation should be looked at, that's all. That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
I think one frustrating thing, maybe it's just my age and being somewhat optimistic, but what kind of example are we setting as a town? 10,000 people. Town votes on the budget. This is what it is. Yeah. And I don't want to pick on one department, but it's glaringly obvious that one been on this board for 3 years, it's been over 3 years, a significant amount. And the excuse that we keep getting is, oh, we were underfunded. We were underfunded. But we keep spending. You know? What kind of example is that setting as a town? We say, well, this is what your budget is. Your town has voted on this to say this is what it is. And I get the legal, I get the maintenance. Those are things that are usually one time, they pop up, and I kind of equate it to a household budget. But yet when we get the line items of we're overfunded or underfunded on personnel line items and stuff, where to me there's some discretion of how funds can move around, that is kind of a slap in our face. I think that, yeah, the town sees it, I hear it all the time. How come you can't control personnel? We see, and I look at, you know, the education, Board of Education. They've got tons and tons of teachers. And they get requests for extracurricular this, extracurricular that. We need an extra drama person. We need an extra sporting coach. We need an extra, and they get turned down because they don't have the funds. Those funds would benefit students, athletes, but they can manage their personnel. We could call that overtime for them. But they manage it, and they don't come in saying, you know, this is what you guys gave us, but we just kind of said, forget it, because these are the services that we need to provide the students. They recognize that the town has said, this is what it is, and this is how we've budgeted it. And I get frustrated seeing that we have a department that can't do that.
So,
They cannot live within those means. And
So-
that's where I'm, that's where I'm asking, is where is this oversight? We see these reports, and for so long we see them, okay, they've been on the percentage, they've been on the percentage, they've been on the percentage, and then the third quarter it blows up. But we can't say, well, we can't pay those salaries. That's the union contract, but where do we say, no, you can't have that overtime, no, you can't, you need to start figuring this out. I would love to be able to say, I'd love to hire a maid, I'd love to hire a driver, I'd like to hire this. That would be fantastic. It would make my life that much easier as a mom. And it'd make the quality of life for my kids fantastic. But I have to live in a budget. Everyone has to live in that budget. And the same has to go for our departments.
couple things. government is a service delivery organization with people. So I'm not defending any one department. It's not a private company, number one. Number two, I'll go back 15 years on you. The Board of Ed has never been underfunded, and there are members of this board who sit here, and the last 2 years have been probably,
I'm not saying that they've been underfunded.
hold on, the
I'm
last 2
saying-
years have, well, you're saying they've made requests and been
Well,
denied.
no. Teacher,
Never
no,
in the last
no, no,
15
no,
years
no,
have
no,
I
no.
Talking about within the
No,
board.
within the school system, not
Within
to
the
us.
board, not to you.
Not
or
to us. Within the school system, I know that teachers have requested things, extra things, and to do, fund extra things, and the Board of Ed has said, no, we cannot afford that.
Okay, well,
Not
yeah,
to
I don't
us.
know that, so. Okay.
The thing I'm concerned about is, on June 7th, we had our meeting, and I had made the comment that the way the track was going with this police budget, it was gonna be over 90 or 100,000. It was never addressed, there was no comment from the chief. All he wanted to talk about is using other money to lease a boat that night. We've never been told why the budget went over. We never were told what type of mitigation was gonna happen to slow down the situation. And it just happens, and it seems to be accepted, and it's not acceptable. And, you know, we don't even know what line items caused the problem. And yet, you know, I look at things like the Torchlight Parade, I don't know how many cops are on duty, 18, 22, whatever, and yet Madison has an event, and I see 2 cops. And it's that omnipresence, that BS of the omnipresence
All right.
that's costing a lot of money. And it's just that those are the kinds of things you can curtail to save 116,000. And I don't understand why the police commission isn't coming to us and saying, hey, we got a problem in April or May. He didn't even talk about it on June 7th.
Finance director report? Do you want to talk about this,
What's that?
the draft of the,
Item six.
Oh. The policy, I think, did she
fund
wanna?
balance?
I don't know, I put it on the agenda.
What, do you wanna talk about it? Or
I put it in your packet.
Look at it.
the questions are straightforward. Number one, do you think we should have a policy?
Mhm.
You ought to decide that, and if so, at what level should you set it, and why? That's, I think, how your discussion should go.
So right now, the fund balance is at what, percentage-wise?
A little over 8%, after what we just finished at 14.50.
And the rating agencies like between 10 and 12? Am
Well,
I correct?
the way we got the feedback is that for a lot of years now, we've been pressing for upgrades. In the early 2000s, we had got 4 upgrades, we did very well. And then all of a sudden, we got stuck where we are now at AA2, which is 2 steps from AAA.
Mhm.
And as we asked the question, Moody's, who always did our own rating because they're the ones that helped us with our bond issuances, said, the reason you can't go further is that everybody who is in your situation has at least an 8.5% budget.
Fund balance.
Fund balance.
Fund
I was
balance.
gonna say a kitty.
Right.
The 8.5% of your budget. And so we started to say to ourselves, all right, let's make that our first target. And then the question is, if we get there, how much further should we go? That's your question.
Did they answer?
No, that's what our question.
Oh.
Not to them. They said, if you can get substantially better than 8.5%, we will entertain
But I guess my
Going
question
higher.
is 8 3/4 good, or is it 18?
I don't know the answer
Well,
to
let
that.
me ask the reason why. If you automatically, say tomorrow we said, okay, we're at 8 now, we just went to 12, can you renegotiate your bonds to get a lower rate? Does that benefit us to be at that level?
It does.
Well,
Well, some of the bonds are callable, right?
right,
Right,
So as they're called, you
if
get
you
lower rates.
refinance, first of all,
right.
there's usually, we're 5 years out from refinancing probably on any bonds right now. I'm assuming interest rates are gonna be higher in 5 years, although we said that 5 years ago, so maybe not. But if we get to a point where we are AAA, and interest rate, the 10-year is still at 2.04 like it was today, which is lower than it was when we went out. It was 2.66 the last time we went out. So, yeah, you may end up with, it may be worth it. This is a discussion for those of you who've been on the board a long time. It's the age-old discussion, are you overtaxing? So how do you get there?
Right.
Do you put in a 1/10 of a mil strictly for your undesignated fund balance? Or do you just say, hey, we're running surpluses every year, this is good, we'll put that in, will that get us there? But then you're not gonna necessarily, like this year we had a rather large surplus, you're not gonna have that every year. It's a question of how you get there, it's not easy.
What's the what's the benefit of being there is a question. You go from
The cost
double A to
of, the
triple
cost
A.
of debt is low.
Yeah,
Okay.
cost of debt.
So, if I was triple A when I got these last bonds
You would have a lower
versus the
interest
double
rate.
A, how much money would the town have saved in dollars on those bonds?
You would have saved reasonably significant dollars over 20 years.
No.
What are you
I'm
talking
talking
about?
about numbers. I want to see a number.
What are you talking about?
0.5%?
Yeah,
Okay, so how many dollars is that a year out of the budget that we wouldn't be spending? That's all I want.
0.5%, what was the bond issue?
10 million, right?
10 million?
well, yeah,
Yeah,
it was
but
10
then
million.
you've got to compound it over 20.
Right.
And plus, we refinanced
Substantial.
a couple
Yes,
others,
yes.
so.
I just think
Yeah.
if you're gonna do
Right.
that, you wanna know what,
You don't wanna put
upside is of
$4
doing
million,
it.
you don't wanna put $1 million into an account that's gonna save you $1,000.
Absolutely right. That's my point.
But,
So, if it is good to get to AAA, what is the benefit to the town in monetary, money
Okay, well,
wise?
we could run a calculation.
Because I think that's
Take an
key to why you
example.
want to even get there.
Okay, take an example, and we'll say this much rating, and you can look up how much that's worth in interest rate. And do a 20-year bond, and I can tell you how much that.
I mean, it would be.
I don't have that in front of
It would
me.
be a good number that we should have, because
Okay.
that helps us make a decision. Do I want to even bother going to 12% if it doesn't make that much difference?
Directly though, are we looking to bond anything in the next,
No.
no.
well, I mean, so does that make any, does it even make any sense to you?
Well, yeah, because and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, because if the savings will, as great as it would have been, it will be even more if interest rates go up higher.
Yes, right,
So if
So-
interest rates go back to 5%,
yes.
and with the AAA, you're paying 5, and with the AA2, you're paying 6 or 6 1/8, that's a lot of money.
That's what I want to, I think we need to monetize that,
Yeah,
and see where we are.
That
I
should
mean,
be really.
just take a stake in time when we took the bonds out, just
Exactly.
look at it right there at that
Do
point.
a $10 million bond
Do
at
it.
AAA and
We
or
can do
AA2.
that calculation.
You're talking 500.
I think it's worth talking about, because if the people ask me why we want 10 or 12, I can say, you know what, we're saving you money by doing that.
Okay,
Or we're not saving money, we should be at 8.
right, exactly,
Right, first of all, we're in very good shape right now.
right.
Best we've been in a long time, because we used a good chunk of our cash at the high school to
And for storms.
take on less debt. But we've gotten a lot back from storms.
Well, that's right, but that's why we're back at 8.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, we got a huge amount from FEMA, obviously. I was gonna say something on that, and I forgot. Breck, going back to your question, are we gonna bond anytime soon? No, the answer, I mean, it's easy for me to say no. 10 years from now, who knows?
Well, no, I mean, I'm more
Right.
thinking short term.
No,
Short term,
no. But the town will bond in the
Right.
future, in all likelihood, for something. And
Like a
at that
transfer
point,
station.
where are you sitting?
Right.
Yeah.
And what are the rates at that time?
yeah.
I mean, yeah, so.
I just want us to make a, based on finances,
All right,
what would be
so-
the best way to go.
for another, however many weeks, why don't we table this question?
And
And
I
then
will
you
do a
can-
calculation.
That'd be great.
Thank you. Maybe I'll come and you can show me how it works.
Okay?
It's actually a little smart.
Bob, I can easily email Mark Chapman, too.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, and just say, hey, Mark, run me a pro forma, AA2, AAA, on what we just did.
Fine.
Yeah, and once the point in time, if they're apples to apples, it doesn't matter, that we know what
I
it is.
mean, that'll take.
I think you'd be better off to find the first one that's gonna be re-upped, and then do it that way, probably,
Yeah.
based on today's rates.
Yeah, because we could get there from here, get there from here, right?
Bob, what kind of interest do we receive at the bank or the investment when we have 10 or 12% of our annual operating budget set aside? You're holding it somewhere, do we have any revenue produced by that?
Yeah, you know, normal interest rates now are really still low on things like CDs, and even the state's fund that they advertise is a 0.15%, but Liberty Bank has been very good to us. We get 0.35% on a sweep account. It sweeps everything, no matter what's in there, $10 million. Everything over 180,000 gets swept into that every day. So it's a very nice return. You saw that our return in 14-15 was above budget by almost $20,000. It came out to, what was it, $80,000 or something like that.
Good. I knew we had talked about the sweep account before.
Right.
All right. Selectmen report?
We're gonna, on youth and, okay, well, let me talk about the boiler here. The boiler is made up of 5 sections. Don't ask me anything more than that, okay? There's 5 sections to the boiler. 2 of them, the seals are gone on them. So the boiler no longer is functioning, and it supplies the perimeter heat in this building. So it's your main heating source. So Don Lucas, we put out a very, very quick, you know, the question is it an emergency? Should I fix it and just do what I gotta do? I didn't. I said, I'm gonna put out an RFP, and I put out an 8-day turnaround on it. If we get a bid, great. If we don't, you know. And I ended up getting 5 bids on that. Okay, very quick turnaround. Did I get 5? I can't remember how many I got. Sorry, but I got more than a few. And we asked them for 4 different options. Repair of the 2 sections. You can actually repair these sections. Well, hold on, Brad, you're shaking your head. Hold on. That's door number 1. Well, let me say 3 options. I don't want, anyway. A second option was to replace, it's a cast iron furnace.
Was that the one in here, or we're talking youth and family?
No, here, yeah.
So that's not the one you reported on 2 weeks ago?
It is not. I know. 3 weeks ago, right? This happened in the last 3 weeks. Replace the current cast iron furnace with another cast iron furnace that runs at 83% efficiency, by the way. They're 83, 84 efficiency. Or look at a gas condensing boiler that runs at 96% efficiency. The numbers, just roughly, just so you know, are like the low bid on repairing these sections was $6,700. Replacing cast iron furnace for cast iron furnace was about $40,000. Moving to a condensing gas boiler, about $60,000. Next week, we're repairing the 2 sections.
Why don't you just do all 5 sections?
Because we put out the bid for the repair the 2 sections that need to be repaired. You don't need to do all 5 sections.
But
It's the
2 are
seals.
gone, 3 are coming. I'm telling you right now.
So what this is going to allow us to do is if we want to engineer, so we did get a couple bids on a gas condensing system. But the bids basically said, if you're gonna put this in, you need to size it. We need to do a better square footage of the building. We didn't have time to actually look at what a good solution might be for, because you might need like 2 or 3 units. That might be a more efficient way, whatever. So that was not a good option. And then replacing a cast iron furnace for a cast iron furnace, I had a couple people tell me, you're likely to get 5 or 10 years out of these 2 sections. It'll give you time, and I need heat. I'm gonna need heat in 2 weeks. And if we went to a new furnace, cast iron furnace, we're looking at like end of October, November 1. So we're gonna replace those 2 sections. It's not perfect. These guys said, we do this all the time. I checked on the company, I called a few people, they're a good company. Actually, the guy is a resident in town that owns it, Allstate Construction out of Farmington, just anybody who wants to know. $6,700, we get heat, and we have time to, if we want to look at other options, we can look at other options. I did it, I chose it, I made that decision, I'm just telling you, that's what's happening. $40,000 to get me no greater efficiency, and now you're that much close. It just seemed like a lot of money, and you're not too far from a real state-of-the-art system. And I just felt like maybe that was really throwing good money after bad. $6,700.
Ask him for the heck of it, how much it would cost to replace the other 3.
But then you're basically replacing the whole thing.
Yeah, but you're talking another 11,000 and you got it all done. Because if 2 are gone, the other 3 are going. And if he's there
I can
doing the
ask
job, ask him how much it's gonna cost to do 3 more.
I can ask him, Brad.
I mean,
But
it's,
the other 3, if they're in perfectly good condition, and they...
it's like a car with cylinders, you know? One's got 80 pounds, the other one's got 105, the other one's got 95, they're all gonna be going pretty soon.
All right, so anyway, that's where we are. I will ask him, okay? I'll ask him,
Yeah.
all right?
That was a good decision.
What?
That was a good decision.
It's
It gives
a...
you time to look
I'm
at it,
gonna
and
tell
then you
you,
got time for efficiency.
I really, when I had a lot of different, I have to tell you, I haven't been hot up, and I was under the gun because, so, whatever. So that's they're gonna be in next Monday, it's gonna be done in 2 days, done, and he's like, it even comes with a guarantee, for like a year or something, and I'm like, that's great. So, and he said to me, you are likely to get at least 5, and you may get 10 years out of this. He said, you may not have a problem again. So, I don't know, and I awarded them the bid on the $40,000 system, essentially. Don Lucas and I were kind of leaning towards that option, and these guys really kind of talked me out of it for a lot less money, which is interesting.
He doesn't want his taxes to go up.
He lives in town, right?
No, he doesn't.
If you know the house, no. Anyway, so anyway, that's quick. The YFS bids, I rejected them all. We got them all in. Don Lucas looked at them. We put it out to bid again. With Don Lucas saw the low bid, and he said, the low bid. He said, we have one shot at doing this building right. And the low bid, he didn't think, we didn't write the bids, I had him write the bid spec. He felt the bid spec could have been rewritten to really get what we want out of that building. They are gonna have heat, again, no major rush to do that. They're gonna have heat.
Mr. Kate, you're talking about?
No, now we're talking about the Union County Services building. So I'll come back to you with that. There's nothing on the board with that. I'll come back to you with that if we come to a decision on a gas boiler.
Did they have some kind of smell over there that they had?
They did today, they did. I don't know how that, Larry was actually getting their burner up and running so that they would have heat, and then that happened.
Those related at all, or? I probably too soon to tell
The
you.
fact that Larry was there, is that related? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Actually, I think it was. Larry was working on it, and I think that led to some odor in the building.
Okay.
And I
It's
didn't.
not the odor from the furnace, but odor from working on the furnace?
I think so, yeah.
All right.
Because the furnace wasn't working,
Okay, all right.
so.
I just heard that on the scanner.
Take note of the front door, it looks awesome, okay, when you, and it truly needed to be done. If you wanted to go into executive session after this for a minute, I would share with you what happened at the dispatchers negotiations, only in executive session.
How come I didn't get called?
I'm sorry?
How come I didn't get called?
You're on the list you're on our list, you can be part of the negotiations. I don't know, I guess I just forgot to give you a call, but I can tell you all about it, Brad. And we didn't go anywhere, so,
If I showed up, you might not have met.
yeah. You're on tape, they already used me on tape once, so, okay? Tomorrow, the Big Y and Coles took a tax appeal, and we have that tomorrow up in New Britain, pre-trial on that. We did settle CVS with a very favorable number for us, okay? Much closer to our number than their number.
Settled
CVS?
locally or settled in court?
Settled in court. They took an appeal, and at the pre-trial, they settled closer to our number than theirs, much closer. So that actually worked out well.
We have a list of how much it costs us for each one of those items legally. You know, a legal line item for everything that we keep doing. Like, the police department went over on theirs, I'd like to know what they spent it on.
Yeah, okay. But, so what's that got to do?
No, it's legal items you brought up, that's legal.
Yeah, this is,
Well, the appeals-
Mike Cronin does this, and I can
Okay.
get you his bills for this.
Okay, all right.
They were
I'm just curious what
They were
cost.
significant from January to June, and they're less significant from July 1 to
Okay.
now, but there
I
was
didn't know,
some.
I didn't know who even handled it.
Yeah, Mike's
Just wanted
doing
to
them. Mike,
understand it.
you know, have you ever been part of a tax appeal?
No.
It's a bit of a, and I'll be very blunt, it's a bit of a hacky situation that goes on. You go up there, the judge looks at you and says, why don't you split the difference, basically, you know? And you really have to argue to get it to go your way a little bit more. Nobody's happy in those things, and residential homeowners frequently are very unhappy. But anyways,
So what is a store assessed for? Big what?
Brad, you know, can you, I don't have it in front of me, I just wanted you, I can have that for you tomorrow. Why don't you give me a call tomorrow afternoon, and I'll get you,
Because they have in the website, I just wanted to give you information, they
Yeah.
have in there that it was a $9 million bill, right on the website.
yeah, no, we're talking, 20s, we're like talking like a lot more than that.
The whole project,
Yeah, yeah,
everything, Coles and all.
yeah, yeah.
So this was affected though when we had when we did the mill rate, though, we had that adjustment because the revenues.
No, this is, you can take a tax bill every year.
But didn't we have an?
We had a reval. Do you want a reval?
Well, no, when we had the mill, when we did settle the mill rate this year after referendum,
Yep.
we had an adjustment on, because the tax appeals were not coming in as well. Because I remember when we had said we wanted that 1%.
Yeah, we set a grand list, knowing what some of those
Right.
But on that,
appeals
on
were.
that,
Yes, that's all.
Right,
but
right.
on that day, when we set that mill rate, then we had an adjustment on the revenue for that. So that,
We did, but not on some of the ones.
so I was wondering if these were ones that were affected.
No, definitely not. Not on the ones we are still selling. We're losing revenue on these for this fiscal year. We are.
Okay,
And this
those are
is
the
a-
ones that were factored in though.
This is not factored in. Coles and Big Y is not factored in. We had no number on them.
For paying for the 15, 16 years.
Well, they're factored into our overall revenue, but the fact that they are taking an appeal that may reduce our revenue was not factored into the revenue that,
I'm
yeah?
confused.
What is that appeal for? Is it this year
Here's the old
or
one
last
we
year?
had.
It'll be for the fiscal year we're in.
Before
Yeah.
we set
Before the
the
appeal,
last
you said-
Remember
calculation,
when we took,
Yep.
we had a subtraction from the grand
Okay.
list associated with
Okay,
some of those outstanding.
okay, very good, thank you.
where was that? Sorry. But we had taken that adjustment, because I remember I was surprised with the, oh, here we go. we had a 9 million loss from the appeals. So for our budget, when we did the mill rate this year,
Yeah, that was,
we
that,
thought, we thought the increase,
right,
so we had said, Norm's value of 2,315 minus an adjustment for low income tax relief, we knew that, minus the 9 million loss from appeals.
but that's
Well, it
not,
wasn't a loss from appeals, it was,
But that was factored into this.
it was our
mill rate.
judgment that we might be lower than the Norm's number.
and
Right,
that-
but I'm just wondering though, if, on the CVS settlement though, is that,
the exact number can't be factored
well,
in.
not the exact, but
Right.
is that, we took, say we thought we were gonna lose $1 million versus 500,000.
Well, the 9 million was a sum of of all our outstanding cases at the time.
That were settled?
No, they weren't set, this was our judgment
Okay.
of where we might end up.
So there you go.
With
Okay,
all
you're
the
right.
ones that were outstanding.
Okay, so since then though, we've settled CVS, you said.
We did settle CVS. I don't even know if these cases had started
I don't either.
at that
I
time.
don't know, that number was just came from Norm, who
Yeah.
said,
This
this
may
is
not
where
have
we're
even
likely.
been an appeal yet.
But we're talking about 9 million out of 2.2 billion.
Well, right.
Right. But it still matters.
It wasn't
Well, yeah,
a
I mean,
big
it increased
impact on
the mill
the
rate
bill.
more than we had expected.
So, anyway.
And you didn't use all mine.
For those of you, I don't know if any of you attended the Historic Resources Inventory presentation that happened, the grant that we received, that you authorized, that town meeting authorized, occurred. That presentation happened a couple weeks ago. You guys saw the CHRO. Did you see that legislation that I sent you? The legislature, I mean, it is, and I'll tell you how it hurts. It's another regulation of up to a 25% set aside for minority-owned businesses that the legislature is mandating. And I'll tell you why it hurts. If we go out to bid for a project over $50,000, $100,000 that involves any sort of state dollars, no, it's more paperwork for the bidder. You're gonna get less bids on these projects. That's the problem. And it drives up the cost of the bids. So you have that regulation in addition to the prevailing wage regulation in our state. So the prevailing wage, that regulation, the people say it averages 10 to 15% per project when you have to factor in prevailing wage. So on a $9 million project, or on a $1.6 million project, I mean, just do the math. That's prevailing wage. This regulation means you're gonna have less bidders, and it's also gonna drive up the price. It's just, and I don't mean to be snarky when I send these things to you and say, as if the cost of business wasn't hard enough in the state of Connecticut, but it's true. It's just another regulation that the state is mandating on us. That's more a comment for your consideration. Mariners Way, they're working hard on zoning changes in Mariners Way. Mariners Way is, you guys know what it is, you know where it is. We started that ad hoc subcommittee of the Board of Selectmen 3 to 4 years ago, really trying to revitalize and reinvigorate Route 1 East from Mystic Market out to Ferry Point. The EDC, with Chris Costa's help, our zoning enforcement officer, have been working on a whole bunch of zoning changes, and they're going to the zoning commission.
On the 20th,
I'm sorry,
October 20th?
October 20th? I think that's a public hearing on it.
Yeah.
They're actually going to the zoning commission in November, I
In
want to say.
November, but we don't have,
Right, right.
She didn't give
And
us a date
it's
yet.
a public, it'll be a public hearing, but
Right.
they're looking to overlay some, actually, I sit here with a zoning commission member, so overlay some commercial areas where there are currently industrial. The idea out there is to make it mixed use, some residential with some commercial, perhaps expanding the size of a store that could be out there over our current regs, perhaps. However, talking about different setbacks, so in other words, you can't have a bigger box, I don't wanna say box, but a bigger store, let's say. Let's say an 86,000 square foot store cannot be right on the street, it has to be set back. So that you have sidewalks, the idea is to have sidewalks and walkable areas, bikeable areas out there. It's a bit of a dream, but it's a plan, okay? It's a plan, and it's a plan for the next 10 to 20 years that we're really looking at here to reinvigorate that area. And if we can get something to happen sooner, I think that's great, but it's a way to increase the tax base and take it, remove the burden from the homeowner and try to get a little bit more commercial activity out there. I'm probably stating what their intention is very poorly, so I would encourage you to take a look at the draft zoning regs that came out of EDC that will go to a public hearing on,
October 20th.
yep, there's 2 public hearings, actually October 20th and I think,
Well, my property's part of it, so I know on October 20th there's one.
Are those online? You
maybe
can
I
rent?
shouldn't have said something, no.
Oh, no, believe me, I'm very interested because it's gonna limit my use and it's
Okay.
gonna limit other people's uses.
Okay.
I don't think it's expanding anything.
Yeah, okay,
We're
so,
going down to B3 from industrial and from B4, so that's not expanding anything.
okay, all right. So they'll hear that.
Is that online by chance? Or-
They sent us a package in the mail.
Yeah, you can, if it's not online and it's already been sent to members of the public,
Should be on that.
clearly you can get a copy of it, Barry, and I can have a copy sent to everybody here. It's lengthy,
Yeah, I know.
And there's
But
zoning
the other one
regs.
you sent us, leading through that one too.
yeah. What?
Reading through the stuff we already had, though, like all those things were in there.
So anyway, that's that. With regard to that, we are looking to possibly get a grant called the BAR grant, a BAR planning grant, a Brownfield Area-Wide Revitalization Planning Grant, okay? And it's for Mariners Way. I know, they always have something, an acronym for it. And we would, the governor announced it, it's $1 million in total for the entire state. Right, okay? You can apply for up to 200,000, and we would like to apply, the town of Old Saybrook would like to apply for a BAR grant for Mariners Way. The catch there is you need a little skin in the game. So it's a 10% matching grant, basically, matching. And these are some of the uses that you can use it for. Market demand studies and feasibility analysis, roadway and streetscape planning, which is a huge deal for an engineer, coordination with existing community plans, conceptual designs, implementation strategies, marketing to assess developer interest, and also for local zoning revisions and other local law changes, and other actions to spur investment in these sites. You know, we'd like to apply for it. I mean, this is having skin in the game and actually leveraging town resources to try to make an area of town more productive. And I'm not asking you for any money right now, but if we get the grant, I will come to you and tell you that. And I would ask you for
Of all those choices, which one would you pick?
I'm gonna let the EDC actually take charge on this. Susie Beckman and Christine Nelson out of planning are going to be the ones discussing with me, but targeting where, and Barry, that's if we get any money, okay? And I will let you know. The grant date is November 15th, so we have to have it in by then. We will apply, and obviously, if there's no match, then it doesn't go anywhere, okay? But I'm just telling you about a grant, okay, that is coming down the
So the
pipe.
cost share is 10%?
10%.
So the most is 20 grand.
The most is 20 grand. Right, and it's money well spent. Listen, that area, and I'm not saying it has to be developed in any particular way, but I feel it can be better used. There's a lot of properties out there that could use some incentive. Okay, lastly, I actually, I'm a little bit more organized today. So, trees. 2 weeks from now, I'm gonna come to you and ask you for money. Okay, I'm gonna ask you for 30 grand. I'm gonna read to you, and I can send this to you. This is from the tree warden. Many of the silver maples along the Hantic Trail, Attawanhood Trail, and Uncas Trail are in poor condition, beyond poor. Several have already fallen, and many have been removed, just so you know. And I feel we need, this is from Jim Kiley, the tree warden, to speed up our rate of removals to attend to this situation. We did remove some last year, but current funds are far from sufficient to begin removing many of these very large trees. Silver maples are notorious for failing, and over the past few months we have seen a rapid increase in both large limb failure and complete tree failure. On the Attawanhood Trail, I will tell you, a limb came down that was the size of a large tree. Eversource came in with a crane to remove this tree that was on our list to remove. And the guy looked at us and said, "This is a $7,000 removal, just so you know." And they took it down. These trees were all planted around the same time, most likely right after the '38 hurricane. Many of these trees were even noted as potential concerns back in 1996 when Indiantown Association did a tree evaluation. I have that report. And as far as I can tell, nothing has been done since to address them. Due to this, we contracted with an arborist consultant trained in tree risk assessment, and we have some results. He has noted 12 trees that remain that are classified as high probability of failure, all with the potential of substantial property damage, and obviously could be something different. There are also many that are in fair condition that will need some pruning to reduce their chance of failure. The idea there would be to prune them to the point where they're less likely to fall, but to take them down over the next 5 years. So Jim says, I am requesting a minimum $30,000 in additional funds to be able to put this work out to bid. I've been telling you about this. If you saw, I could, well, there's a lot of tree problem. Indiantown has, just drive down to Hantic someday, and many of the trees have come down. It's just one dead-looking tree after another, and they're big. So we are going to ask you for a tranche of money. You can do it 2 ways. You can do it as an additional appropriation to the tree warden budget. And those of you who know, I know Don knows Jim. Jim's been superior in this role. He has been just done a great job. But he has some big concerns. The tree limb that came down, the guy, Hank, I forget his name, said to me, kids were camping in that yard like 3 days before that. And when I tell you this tree limb was the size of a maple tree, it was crazy. And so they were just like, hey, we got lucky that time. That's what we had another tree come down and take out a car. I don't know if any of you know Lynn Lombard in Indiantown. Wiped out her car, and she's going to make a claim to Kerma for it. It's just another one. I mean, it's crazy how they're just dying and falling out there. So you can do it out of the tree warden budget by making an additional appropriation, or we can take it from capital non-recurring, and I can take it to town meeting. Either way you want to do it. I'm happy either way. We're going to have, there will be an annual town meeting the last Monday in November. So it can, if it waits that long, that's when we'll do it. And we'll put it out to bid November 29th. So
Excuse me.
Yes.
Wouldn't you think this would be an emergency if these trees are that bad? Why wait that long?
I'm not asking to wait that long.
Well,
I'm
at town meeting, I mean, you're waiting that long.
I've waited that long. If you want, it can be appropriated. You can recommend the appropriation to town meeting tonight, and I'll take it to the next Board of Selectmen meeting. Oh, no, if you add an additional 30,000 to their budget, that's one way to do it. It's an emergency, there's no doubt. And, you know, the trees haven't fallen yet, but they are falling. It's, one way they explained it was, it's been so dry and these trees are half alive, that when it does rain, they soak up so much moisture that the limbs get heavy and they crack and they fall. That's one way Jim explained it to me.
Of course, it can be an awful wet down there if it's not soaking up the moisture.
It's, and, you know, it's just and I put 5,000 more in the tree budget this year. I think the next budget should have, we're up to 14,000 from 9 to 14. Next year I'll probably, or I would recommend probably at least another 10, so that you can do some pruning, you can do some takedowns, and I think this will get us close to an area where with a few more takedowns, we will be in reasonably good shape to get a handle on what's going on around town. What I'd like to do is start planting, not this year, maybe I think next year, elms, replanting elms. And you can get disease-free elms. And I think that'd be neat to start replanting American elms in the town. Disease-free.
So to appropriate $30,000, it has to go to town meeting?
No, if you add it to the tree warden budget, you can do, no, Bob, what are you saying?
I'm saying any additional appropriation
Oh,
to a
right.
budget over
Right, of course.
25,000
Yeah,
has to go.
it does have to go to town meeting.
Yeah.
So that would be in the.
It would have to go to town meeting. But if it was 24,999, that can happen tonight. I'm just saying, we could.
Could we do like 20 and 10?
No, I think that is,
You can see it at the next meeting.
I think that's, you could do that, you could
That's
do.
what I'm talking about.
However, the charter says.
The Board of Selectmen, when requested by any town agency, and after the approval of the Board of Finance, may make special appropriations in amounts not to exceed, in total for that agency, $25,000 in any one fiscal year.
There you go.
Mm.
So if we appropriate $24.99 or thereabouts now, and then you can ask for additional money at
No.
the town meeting.
You could, the town
By
meeting,
the town meeting, you think you get more?
just to increase it to over
So we get them
25.
started now with the additional influx of money.
Yeah,
If we
whatever.
vote on
I mean,
that tonight.
that's one way you can do it tonight. And,
When do you have plan on having a town meeting?
well, I don't,
November
look,
29th, you said.
look, it's a weird time to go to a town meeting, okay? That's all. Everybody agree with that? So, you know, and now we'll get the Youth and Family Services boiler bid in, and so I don't plan on going, I think the next town meeting will be the annual town meeting. How about?
Is all this money gonna come out of the capital non-recurring fund? Is that what we're gonna take from?
No, if you appropriate it tonight, it would come from the undesignated fund balance.
Which we're trying to build up to 10 to 12%.
Things happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a shocker to use that money. I mean, you know, you've done it. So I don't think that's inappropriate to use that money.
Is that the last item on your,
That's it. I saved the best for last.
Excuse me.
Were you gonna talk about the building down there? We got the other piece about the the old train building that was unique, that you did the $60,000?
I wasn't gonna talk about it, I just sent you the
Oh,
final
you did?
report.
Okay, I
That
just,
was-
I know
yeah.
I got it in the mail, and
You got it.
I looked at the 2.35 ROI, and I said,
70, what'd you say?
2.35 ROI, return on investment, in the
For
bond, for that whole project. You'd get a 2.35 ROI.
If you built what?
Wow, that's, I was looking at all those.
Listen,
items.
that's privately owned, we did a market analysis for them, it's in their hands. At some point, if we choose to, we could do a brownfields remediation grant for that building. I think that's ultimately what it would need, is similar to what we did with the 20 acres out Custom Marine property.
Okay,
I think that's
all right.
what we would do eventually there, if that private property owner wanted to do it. But we're focusing more elsewhere.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Any questions for Carl? I would like to make a motion to add to the agenda 2 items, and I don't know if it's gotta be 2 separate motions. One being a discussion about the trees and possible appropriation, and the other being executive session.
Oh, you don't wanna watch the Yankees?
No.
He's a Red Sox.
You should, executive session
I wanna
shouldn't
watch
take,
them lose.
executive session shouldn't take it that long. I don't
No, it
think.
won't, it won't.
So I'll make a motion to add to the agenda the item to discuss the possible appropriation for the tree warden.
Who's seconding that?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I would make a motion to add an executive session to the agenda right after the public comment.
So moved.
To discuss what? You have to put that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if that's a proper executive session item, actually.
Of course it is, it's gonna be,
Litigation,
In the contract?
you're just discussing the contract where it is, that's all.
okay.
You can do it.
Was it pending litigation?
Yeah, it's not pending litigation, it's labor.
We're gonna discuss.
Discussion.
Discussion of
Labor
Labor
negotiations.
issues.
Labor issues. Okay.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So with regard to the trees, which is the next item on the agenda, would anyone care to make a,
I make a motion that we approve $24,999
And
for the removal of trees on the tank.
And that will
are
come
you
from,
recommending that to the board of
Do you wanna
selectmen?
put for the warden's request? So you're not picking up
for the
trees?
tree warden?
Per the tree warden's request,
Yeah.
Move to the board.
move to the board of selectmen.
Are you doing it?
yeah.
Right?
You first, recommend appropriation to you guys?
No, you don't have to recommend it to me. You're adding to his
To
budget.
his budget.
You're
Okay.
adding to
Just
his
an
budget.
appropriation of
You're
Right.
adding to his budget.
And we expect to
Okay,
get
add
$30,000
to
worth of work done,
tree warden's
$45,000.
You may, if you put it out to bid.
24,999.
24,999.
All right, so there's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Is that gonna happen right away?
I'll second it.
We're gonna put it out to bid, Bill.
Okay.
And we've had great success
Well,
putting
this is
these
the
out
time
to
to
bid.
cut them now, not in the middle of the winter when they're already out.
No, it's the opposite.
Yeah, it is the
Leaves are down,
opposite.
it's cheaper, and they move faster when it's cold.
Well, it's a bid.
You do
so
want-
we're not saying by the hour.
Whatever, if we can get some of these trees down, it'll be very important, very important.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, so public comment.
Yes.
I know back in the summer you guys had talked about the piece of equipment for the town crew. So when is that gonna come to a town meeting?
Probably the annual town meeting,
In December?
no, November,
But it's gonna be the end of November?
yes.
So will that give us sufficient time to then purchase that and be ready for what?
Yes,
Okay. That's just-
it's basically in stock.
Okay. And then the other thing I had is when Carl commented, that's the way we run our government. I understand that, but to echo Brett's sentiments, you know, if your furnace at home goes, you have to figure out where you're gonna adjust, and I'm not gonna go on vacation this year because I need to fix my furnace. And from what John had said, it looks like the highest department that keeps going over is the police department. Are we at any time gonna address the overtime for the chief of police? Like, is that in this budget? I'm assuming it's included in there because it's personnel. Nobody wants to review his contract, the police commission doesn't want to talk about it. I mean, it should start at the top. He needs to be fiscally responsible, and the answer can't be, well, I'm over, and that's it. You know, that's what he did say at one meeting.
You don't mean his personal, you mean overtime in general in his
No,
department?
his overtime.
His overtime is generally storm-related and has been reimbursed by the federal government. He doesn't get overtime just working during the year, like.
Well, his contract says he can authorize his own overtime. So he's at meetings saying that he's acting as the contractor and having to figure out all the problems there. I mean, I said at the last police commission meeting, that's not his job, and I hope we're not paying him overtime for that.
We are not paying him overtime for that, and I'm happy to check on that, but.
Okay, because that's a large amount of overtime. I just think there needs to be a little more clarification.
He's not being paid overtime. He's not being paid overtime. He's not being paid overtime.
Then maybe somebody should look at his contract and see what his base salary is and then what he makes.
I know what his base salary is, I mean, I have it in my office.
And that contract is expired and nobody's addressing it.
He took a 0 this year, you know, I'm not saying, but he did, so it is what it was last year.
But that sounds a little ridiculous. I mean, if I was getting what he was getting, I would be fine with taking a 0 and not wanting anyone to review it.
I'm not,
I mean, that's,
yeah, the police commission is the one who reviews his salary.
but if nobody will force their hand to do that, what happens? I mean, somewhere the police department is going over, so is it in personnel?
Yeah, I believe it's mostly in personnel.
Overtime, sick,
Mhm.
vacation.
So if it's not his overtime, then are we not managing the other people properly that we have to pay them a ton of overtime?
That's where it's all coming from.
In all fairness, his contract reads, the only time he gets overtime if it's federal funds, like if it's you know how they do those DWI things? I believe he gets overtime then because it's federally.
So we've been reimbursed 100% for his overtime,
That's the way his contract reads.
but have we? That's my question.
That's an accounting issue.
Okay,
Is that it?
that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Glad that came up. I'm glad it came up earlier. Is the figure 116,000 correct? That the police department is over budget?
It is at this time.
Hmm?
It is at this time.
I can't hear you, I'm
Subject-
sorry.
It is at this time.
At this time, they're over
It's still
$116,000.
subject to audit.
And last year, how much were they over?
110,
110?
give or take 1,000, yeah.
So in round figures, in the last 2 years, the police department was over budget, water of $1 million. Did anyone ever come to this commission and say, we're having trouble with our budget? Or did they just continue to spend? That was a question.
Yeah.
He writes memos and says that.
I'm sorry, my hearing is,
He writes memos saying the reason he's over is that the Board of Finance is underfunded this.
That's not true of last year.
That's what he wrote. He said-
No, he's talking about this year.
was it an official notification?
Yeah, 14.
Yes.
That was the memo I sent.
There's,
No.
it's right here. Yeah, but this is
No,
July
that's
talking
the-
about this year.
No, that's-
To answer your question, yes.
Why is it in a town of 10,000 people, not 12,000 people, not 14,000 people, not 25 or 50 or 100,000? Why is it in a town of 10,000 people that the elected officials cannot get the police department in rain?
That's really the police commission's
I well understand what you said. Nobody is more liberal than I, Carl, you know. I well understand what you said earlier tonight about the difference between municipality, town government. But the fact of the matter is, there's another thing in between. It's called fiscal responsibility. It's something that you teach your kids from the very beginning. Live within your means. Your allowance is a quarter a week. That's what you get. Okay. We have a chief of police who just spends. And he spends for the, what was the word you used, omnipresence? Or does he spend for the omnipotent? Because he's not responsible to anybody. He has this big rumor going that he can't be fired. He's fiscally irresponsible. He doesn't know when to stop spending money. Other towns don't have this problem. Old Saybrook does. You're nodding your head.
I am not disagreeing with you.
You're not disagreeing. It's time to get it in check. It's a lot of money. And looking at it from where I am on the outside, we just keep giving it to him. This board said no money for emergency management storage. Leasing. What happened, Carl? You signed a lease for him. Crapped all over this commission. You signed the lease for the emergency management. He was told no. He went and he sold ice to the Eskimos and he got his lease. You've got a problem. You could say it's Skidooty grinding his axe. You're absolutely right, I am. He's out of control. And the police commission is out of control. And the chairman of the police commission is out of control. This is a town of 10,000 people. You were talking about 10,000 over budget, 23,000. We're talking about $250,000 over the last 2 years. And from where I'm sitting, I don't think that the person or persons running that police department budget cares. They just keep spending. Why aren't you all at home watching TV? You're not doing anything. He continues to spend, and no one has the courage to stand up and say, cut it out or you're gonna get your ass terminated. He spreads this rumor that he's untouchable. If I'm not mistaken, all that law says is you need due cause. That's all it says. Fiscal irresponsibility is due cause. End of story. $250,000. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comment? Yes, sir.
Just a brief question. You raised the subject of a new IT system coming into the town. Are you happy that this system has been proven out somewhere else first? And I have a very good reason for asking that question. You know, in my past career, I brought in a IT system for the company around here. And it was the first of its type for the industry. And 4 years later, we're suing them for $1 million because they just had so many bugs that it just was completely and totally ineffective.
Well, it's part of the discussion we've already had.
You know, towns are towns.
Yeah. It's part of the
You better
discussion.
have had some other town already using it for some time, because if you haven't, you're taking a desperate risk.
I understand that. It's been part of the discussion. We had a meeting when we first got proposals back, and one of the items of discussion is which town uses this system, and we've gone through that already, but it will be a part of the consideration.
And you've talked to the towns?
Lisa has been starting to do that, hasn't she?
So John, you said IT, it's accounting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's an accounting system. Second of all, there are basically two vendors in the market, SunGuard and a company called, or not a company, but a product called Munis, okay? Munis is being run right now, and I thought the number was like 80 of the municipalities in the state of Connecticut, okay?
And
So-
both of them have been used by other towns.
Yeah, they are municipal accounting systems.
It covers the whole town, all the departments, or is it just for town hall?
It's for town government.
It's not the Board of Ed.
It's not Board of Ed.
Or is it the police department?
Yes,
Is it like the other departments?
Yes.
Parking rec, it
Yes.
covers all those?
yes,
Yes.
So, okay, right.
yes.
I'm just really making the point.
No, that's fine. And
that, I wouldn't want to see anybody go through what we went through.
yeah, no,
I have a couple of minor points, but I think Dick has probably said everything that should be said about it. Police department's over budget, but the numbers are down. The budget, if I remember rightly, included the Marine Patrol overtime. I can't remember, did it or did it not?
That's separate.
It's separate, but it's still, that's still in the budget,
Yes.
although you haven't
Separate,
incurred
separate.
anything. The numbers are down, I know the numbers are down, because the other day I listened to the police chief telling everybody how he's going to hire 4 or 5 more policemen, who all have to be trained to be put in. And I'm just wondering, why don't we as a town, and why don't we as a Board of Finance say, no, you're not going to hire any more policemen, because we've already got too many. And we don't need it, and you're not going to have it next year. So why let them go ahead, employ new people, spend buckets of money training them, and then when you get to your budget next year, you're going to end up having to do something about the overall size of the police force. So now you'll have a problem, because you'll have to get rid of them. I find it very difficult to understand why the First Selectman and the Board of Finance can't put the stoppers on the overtime. The unions cannot object, because the unions' contracts they're not guaranteed overtime. So if you put the stoppers on the overtime, you'll keep the cost down. If we don't have 93 people plodding up and down Main Street here with the blue and red lights, well, most of the citizenry will be fairly happy about that. So, the union can't object. If the department can't live within its budget, for whatever reason, and that budget was agreed up at the front end of the year with the Board of Finance and with the chief of the department, and this doesn't just apply to the police department. If they can't live within the budget, then you need to go like a private company would go. If the production manager up at Fortune Plastics said there, I can't make bags for this price, and this is the price that I'm going to have to sell them at, he's likely to get an answer that says, if you can't make it, we'll have to find someone who can. And I agree with Dick that if that departmental manager just spends money despite everybody telling him to stop, then you need to take steps to stop. You don't need the services at the level you are, but you are accepting that just because he says, I want this, I want that, I want the other thing, that he is the gospel on what services this town needs. He isn't entitled to be in a position to tell the town what the town needs. The town needs to tell him what the town needs. And you have an opportunity to stop it running out of the thing by just absolutely refusing to provide any more funds over budget this year, and then deal with next year's budget when it comes up for renewal and discussion. But you have to stop it. And if you can't hire 4 more new men and train them, well, too bad. We don't need them anyway. And the fact that they've left creates the opportunity to put a stopper on it. But if you're going to be reducing in size next year, and sure as hell you will, you don't want to have the difficult position of letting people go. So I expect that you actually will be doing another bond issue. It'll probably be for the $300,000 10-man machine gun equipped patrol boat. You won't be able to come up with $300,000 in spare change.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional public comment?
Can I just follow something on?
Sure.
John, I think that your sentiments, you know, I think most of us here feel the same way. We have no button that says, stop spending. You know, I'm frustrated, I can't say, stop spending, I have no authoritative role. I'm on the Board of Finance, I'm an elected official, we're all elected officials here. They come to us and they say, you know, this is what we need, and we say, okay, we go through it, and people say that we scrutinize the budgets too much, and we scrub them. And then we take it to town, and they vote. You know, at the end of the day, it's the town's vote, but we have no control over saying, you cannot spend any more. I think that we would all love to have that
But
budget. But we don't know how. We
You're
don't-
authorizing further
But we're not authorizing
payments to
that.
the.
We don't authorize.
We haven't
those.
authorized it.
We don't authorize those payments at all.
So what happens if you just don't provide them?
We don't know. I mean, that's the question.
Well,
It's
that's
commercial,
the
it's.
question that needs asking.
I'm sorry, but what you just said is you're powerless to stop him.
Well,
There's,
I don't know where our
you
power
can't
is
be
to.
powerless to stop him. He's a manager, he works for the town. Does he work for the town or is he the town? That's the debate. Is he bigger than the town? How do you stop him?
That's the question.
That's the problem. Does it just continue? Who's he responsible to?
Good question.
That's why I said to you, why aren't you home watching TV?
The Mets are up now.
All right,
Mr.
so,
Seinfeld right
okay.
now.
Thank you for your comments. We are going to go into executive session at
Are you gonna do
8:37.
comments from the chair at all?
I have
So
no comments.
Okay, then, because when I go, I'm gonna go. Okay, what time?
8:37.
Who seconds it?
Okay.
Thanks again for your
All those in
dedication,
favor
guys.
signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?